What's up, everyone? Welcome to Fantasy Football Today, DFS. It's our Week 6 main slate. My name is Sia Nejad, and I'm joined, as always, by Meg Shoup and Mike McClure. We've got a 10-game slate. We got 7 1 o'clock games, 3 4 o'clock games. I got to say, I did pretty well last week. I mean, I followed mostly your advice, Meg and Mike. Obviously, Justin Fields came through at the end, but a lot of our plays ended up coming through as well. So it was a nice bounce back from the week before. I will say I finished 12th in the contest. Everyone join the contest. It's in the podcast description. It's in the YouTube description. Shout out to Daphne15, Artemolo50, and who was the last one here? The Dude 84. What a great name. Those were your top 3 for week 5. Meg, how you doing? How you feeling about week 6? It's a different slate, right? Like last week we had value everywhere. Not so much this week.
No, the pricing feels way tighter this week. So a lot of big decisions to be made for sure in here, but I'm feeling good. I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, I'm honestly, we talk about early only, afternoon only. I think I'm going to lean more into that this week because working through the whole main slate, I'm having problems kind of prioritizing.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm going to be definitely doing some early and afternoon slates along with the main slate, of course. Mike, how you feeling about this slate? It is like the opposite of last week, right? When in terms of like making lineups, it was almost like the lineups made themselves a little bit last week. This week, we're just going to have to leave out some critical players, correct?
Yeah, most likely. There are a few interesting cheap quarterbacks that we think will ultimately end up getting the start that you can go that route and kind of jam some names in. But overall, definitely echoing the sentiment that you definitely have more difficult decisions to make this week than we've seen in a little bit this season. Maybe really the first time this season where you're truly having to decide which direction to go. So I think that there's still some quote unquote good value. It's just in the mid 5s to low 6s and not, stone minimum that we've seen or very close to it. So yeah, rosters will look and feel a little different this week. You won't feel like you have all big names in your lineup, but you might still see scoring be about the same.
All right, let's get to our first game on the 1 o'clock slate. Again, 7 games in this 1 o'clock window. Cowboys -3 at the Panthers. It's a 49.5 point total. Matt has put up a lot of the game notes, a lot of the injury notes, and just really a lot of the efficiency notes here. Dallas, most yards per game and yards per game allowed in the NFL this season. That means that this is probably a good game environment. Again, 49.5 point total is a big one. Meg, I'm going to start with you. I think it's the Dallas side that people are probably more interested in, but both sides of the ball here, plentiful in terms of some fantasy points here. What do you like in this one?
Yeah, so last week, what I got right, I got too many things wrong, like fading Rico Dowdle, who's in this game. But I got a lot right with the Dak stack, and I'm going to go back to that. So Dak Prescott, George Pickens, Jake Ferguson, obviously just an absolute target monster. Found the end zone twice last week, so I'm going right back to the Dak Prescott stack. You can obviously work Javonte in there in some kind of game stack if you'd like, but I'm prioritizing the passing game stack. And then on the other side, you could go Ted McMillan, or you could go Rico Dowdle in the revenge game. It looks like Chuba Hubbard will be out this game, but Rico obviously absolutely exploded last week for 200 plus rushing yards. Now he's made note that there is a revenge game factor here. And, last week we did have some narratives come to fruition. We'll see if it does for Rico this week.
Mike, talk to me about Rico Dowdle, because obviously the price has increased. Let's make the assumption that Hubbard is not playing. Rico is now 5,800. It seems to me, and I don't want to base this just on the fact that he had 200 plus yards rushing last week, but it seems to me that 5,800 is still pretty good value. Does that, and I could be wrong, is that the case, and are you playing him this week?
Yeah, extreme value still at this point for me. First player in all lineups. I got fortunate enough to have him, everywhere last week, and that was certainly beneficial to the cash there. The price point, the increase is certainly warranted. Love the revenge narrative and the angle. I think that, look, I always kind of thought he was right there with Hubbard in terms of explosiveness and should probably have been getting a little more work to begin with. But with what they just saw, I doubt they rush Chuba Hubbard back here. So I am expecting him to be out, and Rico Dowdle will be probably in 100% of my lineups.
Mike, what about the other side of the ball? Is this an environment where, whether you're playing Dak or not, are there other Are we playing maybe the running back on the other side, like Javonte Williams? Are we leaning on Pickens' big playability? Are we playing a value guy like Ryan Flournoy? Obviously, Jake Ferguson, one of the best tight ends in the league, getting a lot of work. So is there a lot of people on the Cowboys side you like?
There is. First and foremost, it'll be Jake Ferguson. That'll be the priority number one for me. It'll be Dowdle and Ferguson in this game. Ferguson's target volume is just going to continue to be there. I think this is the last game without CeeDee Lamb, most likely. I think you take advantage of it after this good game. The price point will probably be to a point where he's not playable the rest of the season when CeeDee Lamb comes back. Ferguson one more time here. I like Pickens. The price point is a little aggressive now at 6,800. I think that because of that, he's going to carry single-digit ownership. And when he does that, I will be interested. Not terribly worried that he only saw 4 targets last week. I made up for it by finding the end zone yet again. Just been a touchdown scoring machine, which has been welcomed. So I think that he's right back to that 9 to 10 target range. And if he is, he probably should be $7,500 still. So not extreme value. Computers probably aren't going to pick it up as a lot of value. So I'm thinking he's going to be under-owned here. But I will play a little Pickens, Ferguson, and Dowdle together.
Meg, before we leave this game, talk to me about, because I know you said you like the Dak stack. So if you were making one lineup, would it be Dak with one of his pass catchers, or would it be with like Ferguson and Pickens, for example?
Probably it's going to start with a Dak Prescott double stack for me, but I'm totally willing to do a single stack. And honestly, obviously, Ferguson is the cheaper way to approach it, but for a tight end, he's now the higher price. I like to pay down for a tight end, and now this week he is the second highest priced tight end, but he deserves it with his target share, and obviously he has second in receptions in the NFL. So it's definitely a Dak double stack that I'll start with, but I'm totally willing to make it a single stack.
Meg, would you be interested at all in Ted McMillan on the other side? We know we like Rico, but would you be interested in Ted McMillan?
Yes, Ted is definitely in my player pool, but I'll probably approach it more with a Rico Dowdle bring back, but I am willing to do a Ted McMillan. Ted McMillan is definitely in my player pool.
Mike, would you be in or out on Ted McMillan just from a player pool standpoint?
Definitely could be in the player pool. I think this game, you could stack up either side of it pretty comfortably.
And did we bring up Javonte Williams? Because this is another guy we can play here, especially, Meg, if people are going to play the Dak stacks, which makes a ton of sense. The implied totals are very large here. I mean, just doing the Javonte side of this, and maybe even you could bring along a pass catcher, but Javonte makes sense too here at, what is he, 6,400?
Yeah, maybe that's a sign my puppy Rudy is decided to join us, and he came up for Javonte. So I don't know if that's a sign or not. So take that for what you will. I didn't play Javonte last week, and that was a mistake. So he's definitely in my pool this week. Not a priority because there's so many other running backs I like, and Rico is the priority in this game. But definitely Javonte is in my player pool.
Mike, we do have to move on, but Javonte, yes or no?
Yes. Again, full on both sides of this game. It'll be half my lineup on a lot of these teams.
It's an absolutely great game environment. Again, 49.5 point total. Wouldn't be shocked if it creeps up even a little bit more, but 49.5 is plenty. Let's go to the next game. Another high total. We're going to start off with two games with two of the higher totals. It's the Seahawks at the Jaguars, the impressive Jaguars. I have to admit it. They look pretty impressive. 47.5 point total. Jags at home, only favored by 1.5 here, which I think is interesting to some folks. Let's talk about, Meg, who we like in this one, because again, we've got some superstars here. I mean, I don't know if you want to look at the Seahawks running game, but JSN on the Seahawks side, on the Jaguars side, I don't know that there's a ton to choose from for me. I'm not going to be on Etienne. I don't know that I'm going to be on any of these pass catchers. Might have a cheap tight end situation going here, but what do you like in this one?
In this one, I really like, obviously, JSN, just an absolute target monster on the Seattle side, but I really respect the Jacksonville defense. And so I really actually like more of the Jacksonville side because the Seahawks defense and secondary especially is very banged up. So we saw that obviously in the massive shootout with the Bucs Seahawks on Sunday. So I really actually like attacking not Trevor Lawrence necessarily because there's too many other quarterbacks I like, but I actually really like attacking the Jacksonville pass catchers. Travis Hunter, big value and looking to be like sub 5% owned. I think that is intriguing. We kind of saw more explosive plays from him on Monday night. So I think that's interesting. And then Definitely Brian Thomas Jr. And then you alluded to a punt tight end. We have a punt tight end situation because Brenton Strange is on IR. And so you have the tight end Hunter Long, who actually does have 2 touchdowns on the season. I'm not expecting a ton, but at 2,500 stone minimum, he's in my player pool. I'll say that. So Hunter Long, Brian Thomas Jr., Travis Hunter probably means I should be interested in Lawrence, but I'm probably not playing them together. I'm just probably going to play one of them, per lineup situation.
Mike, do you like any of the Jacksonville pass catchers? Obviously, Hunter Long is going to come up because he's 2,500. And then I do have to bring up Sam Darnold at 5,400 just because of what we saw last week. He's at least shown the ability to chuck the ball around the yard because they've kind of limited him from a pass attempt standpoint up until last week. I'm still out on him, but 5,400 is kind of appealing, especially if you pair him with JSN and you think this game shoots out. So what do you like in this one?
Yeah, this game's interesting. I was a little surprised we caught the total to 47.5, to be honest with you. I was expecting 44.5, 45.
Me too.
I could get tucked into Trevor Lawrence just because of the price point at 5,100, and I'm not so sure they're going to be leading this game. They might be in some trailing or neutral situations at least. Priority number one, even though it's expensive, would probably be JSN. Still, the price point's elevated to where it should be. It's appropriate. I'm still willing to play him. I think all it does is kind of lower the ceiling on the ownership, which is good. I'm not loving a ton here. Like punt tight end situation with Long, totally get it. Totally fine with it. It's weird because it's a 47.5 point total. I don't feel great about stack partners with Trevor Lawrence at this point. So for me, it's probably JSN and move on at this point. I don't know that I'm not getting much in this game.
Mike, I'm not a huge fan of Trevor, and my bias is coming into play here because I mentioned Sam Darnold at 5,400. I didn't even mention Trevor Lawrence at an even lower price, 5,100 at home. I do think they're going to lean on the run a lot, and I also their pace of play was prior to last week. I think was in the top half of the league, but last week, they really kind of milked the clock. Maybe that was more game plan dependent, so that worries me a little bit. But I could see if this is going to be high scoring, if the odds makers are right. I don't believe in these pass catchers. I don't mind throwing in Hunter Long because he's so cheap. I just don't know where the distribution is going to be because I could see De'Ami Brown making some impact. Parker Washington got some looks. I don't know how much guys like Travis Hunter are going to be on the field on offense. With all that said, Trevor on one side, JSN on the other side, and call it a day. What do you think about that type of situation?
Yeah, I think it could definitely work, and I think it gives you a lot of good exposure to that game if it does end up, at that high scoring. For me, that's where I would get to, right? It's JSN and Trevor. I think the Cowboys-Carolina game is going to win out significantly for me, though, over this one.
Right. And again, if you think it's going to be a trailing game script, and maybe you don't include JSN in that lineup, but I could see Trevor, if he's going to run again because he has to, and if he's going to pepper his targets, I could see myself playing Trevor at only 5,100 because there's a lot of expensive running backs I want to get on this slate. Let's move along. Speaking of expensive running backs, to the Cardinals at the Colts. The Colts hosting this one, 7-point favorites, another high total, 46.5. We've got our game notes here. One of them that is pretty important. Kyler Murray did not practice on Wednesday. We'll see what happens with the Thursday practice report. But Meg, you and I were talking pre-show. If it's Jacoby Brissett, is that a downgrade? I'm not 100% sure if it is, and maybe we'd even consider him as a quarterback option I assume he's at 4K. I haven't even looked at, Matt's already done the work for me. He's 4,200. Let's talk about the Jonathan Taylor side though, Meg. Most expensive running back on the main slate, 30-plus fantasy points in 3 of the last 4 games. Absolutely insane. I played him last week. He's 8,500. I'm going to find a way to play him this week. What do we like in this game, Meg?
Very similar is, I was so happy that JT was kind of a lock button for me last week. I'm going to pretty much do the same. I'm going to prioritize him and a couple other high price running backs. And so he is the priority for me in this game. Really not much else. If it is Brissett, I understand that that's not maybe a big downgrade to how Kyler has been playing, but it's still, I don't have a ton of interest in Marvin Harrison or McBride. And then the running backs, obviously, Michael Carter at 5,000, 50 is he 5,000 or 5,200? I apologize, but not interested there. I think I'm just going to do JT and move on. Maybe Colts defense. The only other value play I do consider as value is Josh Downs is 4,200. And for me, I understand he's not running enough routes because he's more in 3 wide receiver sets, but Downs at that price, I think, is viable because I think Adonai Mitchell is fully in the doghouse. So I do think Josh Downs at 4,200 is in my player pool, mainly for like just the cost.
Michael Carter, 5,300 here. Marvin Harrison, also 5,300. Trey McBride, 5,500. Tyler Warren, 4,900. Mike, I think if I was going to fade Jonathan Taylor, I would just be inserting Tyler Warren and hope he gets some through the rushing attack, but also catches a touchdown or two as well. But I don't plan on fading Jonathan Taylor. What do you like in this game, Mike?
Yeah, it would be Taylor first. The price points, it's getting up there, but it's likely, the floor is just incredible. So it would be almost exclusively on the Colts side right now. Maybe if we get a little more clarity on quarterback situation, if there are some changes, we might, get a change. But right now it's Jonathan Taylor, Michael Pittman, and then Tyler Warren and Trey McBride kind of in the same spot. Like I never going to have a problem playing those two guys. I like them. They're probably going to end up in my top 3 at each position later in the show just because of where tight end is this week. But not a game that I'm expecting to stack up. Mostly just one-off pieces, and the likely scenario is probably just Jonathan Taylor and move on.
Yeah, just so everybody knows, the combo props, which are rushing and receiving at the running back position, Jonathan Taylor's at the top, predictably. It's always going to be, Christian McCaffrey or Jonathan Taylor at this point, as long as they're healthy. Jonathan Taylor is 110.5. Again, that's his combined rushing and receiving line at the sports books, give or take 1 or 2 yards. Christian McCaffrey is next at 108.5. And then what's interesting is the next 4 running backs, none of them are on the main slate. I'm just going to mention them just casually as I go down the list, but it's Saquon Barkley, who plays Thursday Night Football, Bijan Robinson on Monday night, Breece Hall plays in the morning on Sunday, and then Jahmyr Gibbs, I believe that's Sunday Night Football at the Kansas City Chiefs. So the next one on the main slate after those top 2, JT and Christian McCaffrey, Josh Jacobs, who we're going to get to. He's only 7,300 and in a pretty good spot. Then we get to Achane, Genty at 94, and then we go down to the likes of Quinshon Judkins, James Cook. Is he on the main slate? No, I don't think so. Javonte Williams, Kyron Williams after that. All right. I think people want to know, especially for these high-priced running backs, kind of where their lines are set. So I felt like we needed to discuss that. And I can discuss some receiving yards props as we go along, but we've got more to get to. I mentioned Quinshon Judkins. We're going to cover Browns Steelers. Does anybody want to play Quinshon? We'll find out right after this message from our partners.
This is European soccer's biggest stage.
Written in the stars! What a difference she has made!
The question is, can you handle it?
Can you handle it?
The crowd here feels electric. Stream every match of the UEFA Women's Champions League on Paramount+.
We're back on Fantasy Football Today. DFS, quick reminder, make sure you sign up for our $5 FFT DFS contest. It's in the YouTube description. It's in the podcast description. I will also be tweeting it out later today as well. Again, it fills up at 200. Browns at the Steelers. Mike, I'll start with you here. I'm not particularly interested in this game. I'm not going to play Judkins. He's 5,900. I can completely understand if people want to. I'm not playing DK Metcalf. I'm not really interested in any of the pass catchers. I think Dylan Gabriel is interesting at 4,400, but that's just not something I'm going to speculate on the road in Pittsburgh in a game that I think Cleveland's just going to try to run the ball as much as they can until the game gets completely out of hand, if that happens. Any interest, Mike, in this game?
Not a ton. If you told me I had to play someone, the first one in would be Jaylen Warren for me, actually, at 5,400. Still's got the volume in the running game and probably still in the passing game. I think the game still can end up being competitive, but just low scoring environment, clock running. Yeah, I'm going to be out on this game, but if I had to, it'd be starting running back on either side.
Yeah, Meg, I'm out. I mean, Judkins, no. I get the Warren argument, but I'm not sure how much they're going to use Gainwell, because I got to admit, Gainwell looks a little bit better than I thought he was going to. Credit to him, by the way. Is this one where we just move on to the next game, or do you have somebody in here you want to play?
It really is a pretty much move on, 37.5 total. I will say Njoku got a lot more work with Dylan Gabriel. I'll throw that out there. He's in my pool, but he's far down the list in my pool. So I'll throw that out there, but no, it's pretty much a move on for me.
Yeah, Matt is way ahead of us. If you're listening to the podcast, thank you for listening. But I got to say, some of these graphics are beating us to the punch, because the graphic that Matt already put up here, which includes, of course, the game totals and some of the game notes and injuries, David Njoku is only 3,500 season highs in receptions, targets, receiving yards, and fantasy points last week versus Minnesota. So Njoku at 3,500, maybe a play. You're hoping he gets in the end zone for sure, but certainly somebody to consider as a contrarian option. And this, I would say, is a contrarian game. Let's move on to Chargers and the Dolphins. Mike, I'm going to start with you again. It's only a 44.5 point total. We know both of these teams have offensive line issues. We know the Chargers have some running back issues. I don't know if people are going to want to invest in Hassan Haskins or Kamani Vidal. I'm not really interested in them unless I get major clarity on that situation. Achane is 7,800. Waddle still seems to be pretty great value at 6,100. I think Justin Herbert is interesting in this game as maybe a stacking option or playing him naked. Do you like anything in this game, Mike?
I do. Yeah, I like the Chargers side quite a bit. I like Justin Herbert. He's got the rushing floor right now, really. Another 60 yards rushing last game. Has been, I believe, over 30. Yeah, 24 there. So he's been basically 25 plus in 4 of the 5 games. Only had 6 rushing yards against the Denver Broncos in that really competitive game. This, to me, defensively is the exact opposite of the Denver Broncos. So I think that he can get loose here with his legs. So I'll be playing some Justin Herbert at 6,300. I think he's got some pretty big upside overall. I could pair him with Ladd McConkey, who really hasn't done much since the Chiefs game in terms of yardage. But at 5,700, I would speculate on him a little bit, but mostly Chargers side, mostly Justin Herbert, and be Keenan Allen or Ladd McConkey.
One of the props that I'm likely to put in later today, Meg, and I looked at this. This prop was out Tuesday night, and maybe the juice is inflated, maybe not. Justin Herbert over 1.5 touchdown passes, I kind of like. And I understand you can run on Miami. I understand what happened to them last week. But I just think this is going to happen through the passing game, especially because, frankly, I respect the running game that went against Miami last week more than I do Hassan Haskins and Vidal behind this somewhat tattered offensive line. We'll see if some of these guys come back, but I'm not sure they will. I like the Justin Herbert play. I think I could play him naked, but I think I could play him with some of the short area guys like McConkey and Keenan Allen in a double stack situation, or even Oronde Gadsden. I really like Jalen Waddle, though. What do you like in this game?
I think that's a really good point about Herbert. Mike pointed out he's using his legs a lot, so you got to like that. And then I like the 2 touchdown look, just because I don't see them getting into the end zone on, with the 2 running backs. So I'm out on the Chargers running backs. Herbert, I do think I'm playing less lineups this week, so I don't know that I'll get to Herbert, but I totally get the case for Herbert using his legs, stacking him with 1 or 2. It would be Keenan Allen or Ladd McConkey, just those short area throws. I think they're going to have to pass as an extension of the running game, because I don't think there is going to be much of a running game. So that is a reason to like Herbert, whether he takes off and runs or he gets the ball out quick, and then stack him with a Ladd McConkey, Keenan Allen, maybe a cheap Oronde Gadsden. I don't think they're going to be able to go downfield to Quentin Johnston with the how bad the offensive line is beat up. So yeah, for me, I get the Herbert stacks. I don't know they'll get to it, but I do have Keenan Allen and Ladd McConkey in my pool, as well as Oronde Gadsden for a cheap tight end option.
Mike, I gather that because of the pricing this week, that somebody like Achane is not really being picked up, not really highly owned. Am I right about that? And if so, given his role in the receiving game, but also in the rushing game, is he somebody you'd consider at 7,800?
Yeah, I would consider. And he's still going to grab some ownership, but it's not, the extreme levels. I think the interesting thing to do there would be to pivot from Jonathan Taylor and play Devon Achane with Justin Herbert. Not even necessarily needing a stacking partner on the Herbert side. Mm-hmm. I think you could make a relatively unique build that way. Where I would do that, though, is probably like maybe some of the higher stakes, lower field size contests, where I think that'd be probably the most appropriate. But yeah, I do kind of like HN a little bit here.
Explain for those who might not understand why. Why would you do that type of build in a higher stakes, lower entry format?
Just way more likely to be unique in terms of the combination. You talk about 400 entries in the contest. You may be one of 3 entries that have that combo, but in an entry like a large, like the Millie Maker, 200,000 entries, there's still going to be, at least 500, 600 lineup combinations that have that. Just better chance of being unique and winning all the money in the smaller field contest.
Gotcha. Okay. Interesting stuff there. Let's go to the next game. Rams -7.5 at the Ravens. We already know what the Ravens situation is. They just really can't play much offense or defense. And here come the Rams coming off a loss as a 7.5 point favorite, 44.5 point total. Keep in mind that the Rams implied total, even though this total seems pretty low, Rams implied total still pretty high. Meg, I'll start with you. I think Stafford Nakua stacks are going to be pretty popular, even though it's like a little bit expensive for obvious reasons. Nakua being super high priced here at 8,700, and Stafford not, 6,400 is not a cheap quarterback by any means. Are you interested in that stack? I assume you're not interested in much on the Ravens side. I'm just curious how you're playing the Rams side.
I think it feels like you have to have like min 1 Rams in this situation, given what we've seen with how beat up the Ravens are. So for me, I think if you're playing Stafford, it feels more comfortable to double stack him, just because it feels like that's how he gets there. I typically don't play a Stafford a ton because he needs those 3+ touchdowns, but he's gotten there the last 2 weeks. But that was with more of a back and forth game environment, and I don't think we're going to get that here. So that's why I'm a little more interested in Kyren Williams this week. I'm not typically a Kyren girl where I play him much, but this seems, even with having a fumble last week, McVay just sticks with him, goes back to him. And I just feel like Kyren in the game script of likely playing from ahead, and I understand playing from ahead, it could be 3 Stafford touchdowns to Puka and Devontae Adams that gets him there. But so I say that to say that Stafford and Puka and Devontae Adams are all in my pool, but I most likely will play more Kyren Williams because there's so many, again, other high price guys that I want to play.
Mike, I like the Kyren Williams call here. I mean, I certainly like the price on Kyren Williams at 6,300. I do worry a little bit about Blake Corum, but not enough for me to think that Kyren doesn't hit value. What do you like in this game, Mike?
Yeah, I'm always wanting to back Kyren in some capacity. I'm probably not getting there just because I'm going to be 100% on Dowdle this week. And there's a couple other running backs we're going to talk about later in the same game, which I generally kind of like because of the nature of that game. For me, it's Puka Nacua. He will be essentially first player in all lineups for me. I really just love the volume, love where the floor is, and I really believe we have yet to see his ceiling, which I think his ceiling is 50 fantasy points, right? Like I think he can score 50 and probably will at some point this season. So, an off game, I say an off game, but it's like an average game, I'm expecting 26 fantasy points here. Like I have a median projection at 26, which is a full touchdown higher than essentially anyone, right? So give me all the Puka Nacua, every lineup, and that'll be my priority here.
Mike, when we get to your top 3 at each position, a lot of people look at that and consider some of their cash game plays. Would Nacua be a cash game sort of, I hate to use the word lock, but that's terminology other people use. Would it be a cash game lock for you?
Yeah, agree on not the terminology I'm using, but yes, he would be a core lineup play for me. That is how I would describe it. He is in a lineup core for sure.
Mike, one last question on the receivers, and then Meg, I want to get one last opinion on this game before we move on to the Patriots and the Saints, which I happen to think is a very interesting game. Is it getting too cute, Mike, to save some money? Because let's say we want to spend up on Christian McCaffrey and Jonathan Taylor and some of these other guys. Is it too cute to say, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go down to Devontae Adams because he's so much, he's $2,000 less. Maybe he can have that game where he makes up for it with the touchdowns. Like, what are your thoughts on that in tournaments, not cash?
I think it's okay. You need the touchdowns with Devontae generally. Now he proved us wrong on that recently. Maybe it was last week, maybe the week before. Yeah, if I'm playing Devontae, it's probably I probably want a handcuff with the quarterback situation at that price. So I'm not going to do it, but I totally get trying to save $2,000.
Meg, what are your thoughts on Davante Adams?
I actually do like that look as far as Davante Adams has been more the red zone target now. I believe the last 2 weeks, Puka Nacua has been the one to find the end zone, but I actually do like that approach to say, I'm going to take $2,000 savings, pay for Davante, hopes he finds the end zone. We know Nacua is going to have a ton of volume, but if he gets, 10 for 120, okay, I can beat that if if Davante Adams finds the end zone once or twice. So right. I don't mind doing that actually.
So like 10 for 120 versus 6 or 7 for, I don't know, 75, but you've got a touchdown on top of it, maybe.
And you save 2,000, and he's coming in much lower owned too. Obviously, Puka looks like he'll be the most owned on the slate, or at least one of the top 3. So you have a little leverage there too.
Okay, let's move on to the Patriots and the Saints. Meg, I have to start with you here because you are kind of the Drake May whisperer, and I've come on board a little bit. I'm very impressed with his game, but I also like this game environment for him. I know he's on the road. The Patriots laying 3.5 points. Obviously, always like the dome game environment. And I don't really love the Drake May stacking partners. I mean, I think there's so many different guys that can catch, even though Stephon Diggs completely went off. But at 5,900, knowing that this guy's going to use his legs and his arm, and that the Saints lately have offered some pushback, I kind of like Drake May this week. Do you?
Yes, he is one of my core play quarterbacks this week, Drake May, and I'm going to stack him with Stephon Diggs. We saw a breakout the last 2 weeks with Diggs, 2 games in a row over 100 yards receiving. Obviously, the two of them put on a show on Sunday night, beating the Bills. So I absolutely love Drake May, Stephon Diggs, have Hunter Henry in the pool, but the priority stack is going to be Stephon Diggs in this one.
Mike, what are your thoughts on the Drake May side? And would you be stacking him? If so, with what pass catcher?
Yeah, I do like Drake May a lot. I'll be playing him. As far as stacking, I don't think you have to force a stack. Diggs, if you want to go right back to it, like if what we saw is going to be where he really is at 5,800, you're not going to argue with that against this matchup. So I like Diggs. He would be the first choice. Henry would be second, but mostly just looking at playing Drake May and getting exposure to that offense and that matchup via Drake May, and kind of moving on. So not necessarily forcing a handcuff here.
Yeah, I agree with that, Meg. Any run back potential here? I mean, Kamara and Kendre Miller eating into each other's work a little bit. Kamara's 5,700. Rashid Shaheed he finally caught a long bomb yesterday. I don't know if we're going to see that much volume and much efficiency, but he's only 4,600. Chris Olave is only 5,100. Any interest in any of those guys?
Chris Olave, I know, is looking to come in very, very high owned. So that is not of interest to me just because he doesn't feel like he has a big ceiling. So right. I don't love the other side. Like you said, Kamara is kind of cannibalized in that running back situation. So don't like that. Where I would maybe have some interest is Rashid Shaheed. He's coming in lower owned. That's where I would have some interest, but I'm not going to force it. Let me say that.
I'm looking for Ramondre. I'm going to find it in a second, but with Antonio Gibson out and with Trevion Henderson not looking very good, like just not looking ready to have an impact on a game. If I don't know how else to say it. I understand the problems Ramondre has with fumbling the ball, but he's only 5,300. And I look at his prop. He's set for 43.5 rushing yards. And just to compare that to Trevion, that's compared to Trevion's 33.5. At least that tells me that people think that Ramondre is going to be the 1A to 1B, if you will. All I'm saying here is if we're trying to save money on this slate, I think Ramondre at 53, I think taking a shot on him makes some sense in a tournament style format. Meg, am I crazy?
No, I don't think you're crazy. I don't know that I'll do it much, but you're definitely not crazy. It definitely makes sense because I think he'll come in low owned too and has a good matchup against the Saints defense. So honestly, talking it through, I probably should be considering it more.
Mike, any thoughts on that? Am I being like too cute? Is it like, okay, Sia, we get it. Like you're trying to outthink the room, but it's not going to work out.
I don't dislike it. I think that the volume is still a question mark for me.
Yeah.
That really, that's kind of what it comes down to, right? So like, I think that Travion Henderson's still going to get 6-7 carries, and I think Drake May's going to throw the ball. Drake May's going to run the ball. Like, what's the ceiling outcome for Stevenson on touches, right? Is it 15?
Yeah, that's the
scenario that there's 20, right?
Yeah, that's the ceiling. Like it would be 12 carries, maybe 13, depending on the game script, and it would be 2 or 3 receptions. I think that would be the ceiling for Ramondre.
So I think, and could he get there on that? Yes, he could. Same price point, essentially. Rico Dowdle had 26 touches last week. I think that there's a scenario where Ramondre is getting 12 to 13 total touches in this game, and you're essentially getting doubled the number of touches from Rico. So it'd have to be you're playing both of them. For me, it would not be a scenario where you're playing Ramondre instead of that. It would just be pairing both and electing to spend that money elsewhere.
I'm thinking like 1 o'clock slate, Meg, where I've got like I'm playing 3 running backs, but I've got Ramondre and I've got Dowdle and I've got a pay up. But because I've sort of paid down at 2 running back positions, I can play, let's say, Stafford with Nakua and still have money to kind of spend around just a little bit because of how much I like. That would be maybe the scenario where I would consider that. But again, these aren't a lot of this is just discussion so that all of you that are listening, thank you for listening, by the way, can consider it. Not because we're definitely behind it.
Right. And I've honestly been doing that because, again, when I was trying to build full slate lineups, I just felt uncomfortable with the decisions because there's so many high totals and where do you target the run game, the pass game. So I've been compartmentalizing it more like that in the 1 o'clock only and 4 o'clock only lens. And I think that makes a lot of sense. Okay, if I'm playing 1 o'clock only, I could play him as one of my 3 running backs. And I think that makes a ton of sense.
Well, we just covered the entire 1 o'clock only slate, and we've got the 4 o'clock only slate to go. Only 3 games, and we're going to get to our cheat sheets and our top 3 at each position. That's coming up right after this message from our partners.
May, touchdown, TJ Watt. Got him. What a play. Give me 2, give me 5, give me double touchdown.
We're back on fantasy football today. DFS and Mike, it's the game we've all been waiting for. The Titans visiting Las Vegas. Titans a 3.5 or maybe it's 4.5 point dog at this point. Maybe I guess it's 3.5. 41.5 point total. Of course, I'm being facetious here. Brock Bowers inactive last week, did not practice on Wednesday, but it does look like Michael Mayer is playing. Geno Smith, 9 interceptions this season. I think that's to 6 touchdowns. So that's not the ratio you want. Mike, the only player that there's a couple players I'm potentially interested in here. Trey Tucker at 4,800, just because I think he's getting a few more targets than people are noticing. And I like what he can do with taking a target like for a deep shot. So it's somebody I would consider, but it's not like a core play by any means. Ashton Genty at 6,900, as inefficient as he is, we know Pete Carroll's just going to try to run the rock on this Tennessee defense so that you can run on. Outside of that, I have no interest. And frankly, those 2 names that I just said, I'm not even sure I'm playing them.
Yeah, I'm not playing anything here other than maybe the Raiders defense at 3,200. And that would be while I'm fading Ashton Genty. There's going to be a strong correlation between Genty and the Raiders DST in this one, in my opinion. So I may play the Raiders defense without Genty, taking advantage of a little bit of that correlation when he does have a good game. Nothing else though.
Meg, Michael Mayer, I just want to point out, if Bowers doesn't play, he's only 3,100. But I mean, how confident are you to play a cheap tight end in this particular offense? I'm not 100% sure. Do you like anything in this game? I'll point out Tony Pollard on the other side. He's 5,500. Jacoby Myers, who we've been kind of off and on, is 5,800. But I mean, he's just kind of sinking with the Geno Smith ship here. Do we like anything here?
Yeah, I think you can consider Michael Mayer at 3,100, but I honestly would probably rather play Hunter Long at stone minimum of 2,500 if there's a choice between the two and I need to save salary and I'm doing so at the tight end position. I think Genty's in my pool, but if I'm being honest, I don't know that I'm going to get to him much, if at all. And then Mike made a point. I think you could have both defenses in the pool. I mean, this is a situation. You just noted Geno's turnovers that I think that's fair. That just paying down for both of these defenses makes sense.
All right. That's a good call on the defenses. Always a lot of pay down defenses. I mean, for those of you that are out there and you find yourself spending up, I generally think, especially last week, can I tell you guys something? The only reason I didn't win the FFT DFS contest, I finished 12th, is because I had so much money left over that instead of taking the Saints defense at 2,200, which I had played in a lot of my other lineups, I had like 2,900 left. So I'm like, well, the Saints play the Giants. I think the Giants could, absolutely like crush Rattler. So I may as well play that 2,900. If I hadn't made that, I think the difference was like 17 points, and that would have been enough for me to take over first place. So anyway, pay down defenses usually is the play. We'll try to maybe talk about some of those defenses we like a little bit more on this show. Let's go to a game we like a little bit more. 49ers +3 at the Buccaneers, 47.5 point total. We're not really sure about a lot of these players, including Brock Purdy, Ricky Pearsall, Juwan Jennings, Mac Jones. To me, Meg, it looks like we're going to see Mac Jones again. And it looks like we might see Juwan Jennings, but not Ricky Pearsall. On the other side of the ball, Bucky Irving, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, got to keep an eye on them. I would imagine we'd see Chris Godwin, but not Bucky and Mike Evans. Meg, any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, that's what it's sounding like to me from the injury front, which takes us back to where we were on Thursday night. Christian McCaffrey is being used as a receiver. I think whether Jennings plays or not, he has to be used as a receiver. I forget what it is, but if you just took his receiving points, I think he'd be like wide receiver 8 or something like that. That's wild. He has the third most receptions on the season in the entire NFL. So it's basically like you're playing a receiver in the running back spot, because it is certainly in this matchup. I don't think he's going to get there on the ground, but I think, 1 to 2 touchdowns always in McCaffrey's bag. And then just his receiving usage, he's always going to be a priority play for me. Obviously on the 49ers side, paying down. If Jennings is out, I might go back to Kendrick Bourne, but only if Jennings is out. Obviously, he has got a great rapport with Mac Jones. Mac Jones is definitely in my pool also for 4 p.m. only, and probably not main slate. And then Jake Tonjes, a cheap tight end, another cheap tight end, is someone I'm interested on the 49ers side. On the Bucs side, it's probably just Rachaad White and Ibuka. And then honestly, Baker would be kind of a Baker Mayfield, Rachaad White and Buka stack is what I'd likely do. Again, probably more specifically to the 4 p.m. slate for Baker Mayfield or Mac Jones stacks.
Mike, I think this is one of those games where we need to wait for injury news outside of Christian McCaffrey, who I would imagine you're playing at 8,400 because you play him pretty much every week, and so do I. I do want to say I'm kind of looking around Twitter on practice report stuff, and again, we're recording this Thursday, right just before noon is this moment right now. There's a person on Twitter named Rock Riley who I don't follow, but when I typed in Bucky Irving, like his name came up, and he says, Rock Riley says, Bucks not seen at practice. Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, Bucky Irving. So again, no big surprise there. Although Chris Godwin, I guess, is a little bit of a surprise to me that he's not at practice on a Thursday. But with all of that said, Mike, is it Christian McCaffrey? And if so, who else is it?
Yeah, it's Christian McCaffrey first and foremost. And I'm going to try to play Christian McCaffrey, Puka Nacua together again, like I do most weeks. And Rachaad White would be next. You're going to have to find some value. Again, I may play all the way down to a cheap quarterback if needed. So, yeah, Rachaad White. I mean, he's going to touch the ball 15 to 20 times in this game. I think the game's going to be extremely competitive. Like McCaffrey, like he doesn't have that kind of upside, but he can find the end zone. He's definitely going to be involved in the passing game. That's it for right now, and then we'll see what the receivers and stuff like that, but could definitely sprinkle in cheap receivers, tight ends on either side if you need to finish the lineup. But for me, what I'm trying to get is McCaffrey, Dowdle, Puka Nacua, Jake Ferguson, and Rachaad White all in the same lineup.
Yeah, I would imagine if we don't see Evans and Godwin, And obviously Bucky, who I don't think is going to play. I don't know, Meg, would you consider Sterling Shepard at 3,800? Like, I mean, he's not super explosive, but he gets a lot of targets from Baker. He's a trusted target at this point. And by the way, shout out to Sterling Shepard, because we want to talk about guys who have had the most unfortunate injury luck. And I'm talking about Sterling Shepard. I'm talking about J.K. Dobbins. And tweet at us if there's another guy that has kind of made it back, because most people don't make it back. And a lot of that is circumstantial. A lot of that it's just good rehab and good luck. But Sterling Shepard has had plenty of bad luck. The fact that he is still in the league after the two major injuries that he had, same with JK, is actually incredible. And the fact that he's contributing is actually incredible. Sorry for the soapbox. Would you consider Sterling Shepard at 3,800 if both of those top receivers outside of Ibuka are out?
Yes, if Godwin is out, then Shepard would go into my pool as a cheap receiving option.
And we have to talk about, okay, so we don't know about Juwan Jennings. He's 4,800. We don't know if he's going to play, but we do have to talk about Kendrick Bourne. So if Juwan Jennings is out again and Ricky Pearsall is out again, Kendrick Bourne is only 5K. I like DeMarcus Robinson. I had a prop on him last week. It ended up hitting, but he didn't get a ton of work. He's only 3,600. Meg, would you consider again, if these receivers, these main receivers are out, Kendrick Bourne again at 5K? Because that connection was wildly good.
It was wild last week because I was like you. I had DeMarcus Robinson and I kind of laddered him up. And then we see Kendrick Bourne looks like Justin Jefferson out there going for like 140 or something like that. Just wild. But obviously Mac Jones and Kendrick Bourne do have a connection. They played together, I believe, at the Patriots as well. So but only if Jennings is out. If Jennings is out, then I will have Kendrick Bourne in my pool.
Mike, you agree if Jennings and Pearsall are out, and obviously Kittle is out again, you'd agree that Kendrick Bourne at 5K is pretty good value?
Yes, definitely. Definitely something we're watching there. I fully would expect, I'm not expecting 142 yards again, but I would expect double-digit targets. Like we've seen, we have 6 and 4 targets in weeks 3 and 4.
And for the record, I'm sure you both would agree that if Juwan Jennings is playing, that he's pretty good value at 4,800. And I don't know that eliminates Kendrick Bourne from the value conversation. Maybe it stunts the growth of DeMarcus Robinson a little bit, but I think Juwan Jennings or Kendrick Bourne, depending on who's playing and who isn't, kind of either way, I think at 5K or less, pretty good value to me. Let's move on to the Bengals and the Packers. This is a 14-point spread. Packers at home, coming off a bye. Bengals, it appears that they're going with Joe Flacco, who just beat the Packers 3 weeks ago, which, I mean, I don't know that he beat the Packers, but you know what I mean? Like he was the quarterback when the Browns beat the Packers. I don't know what to say about this one, Mike, outside of the fact that I love Josh Jacobs. I played a lot of Jamar Chase last week, and it really paid off because of garbage time. I don't know that I'm counting on that here, but at 7,700, maybe afternoon slate, maybe something I'd consider. But Jacobs, from a volume standpoint and a matchup standpoint, 7,300 seems like great value. What do you think?
Yeah, I think the problem for me is just so many running backs I want to play, right? So do you want to play him over Christian McCaffrey or Jonathan Taylor? Maybe you do, and I think that's very legitimate. But you also have Rico Dowdle, Rashad White. There's just not enough spots to play running backs. I wish I could move Christian McCaffrey to wide receiver because that's what he is this week. But you can't. So I'm not going to get to Jacobs. I totally get the love there on it. I think it's a good contrarian play. I might play Joe Flacco at 4K.
Oh, he is a flat 4K. I should have mentioned that. Okay, go on. Sorry.
He is a flat 4K. He's obviously had more than enough experience in the National Football League. He's got good receivers. Like you got Jamar Chase out there, right? You got T. Higgins out there. You've got a guaranteed neutral or trailing game script the entire way of throwing the football. So, we've talked about it. We've seen him do it with a number of teams over the last 5 years, right? So at 4K, again, this important to note, it would be more about the combination of the rest of my lineup, right? If I play Joe Flacco, I can play Christian McCaffrey, Puka Nacua, Rico Dowdle, Rashad White, Jake Ferguson. And honestly, I could probably, you could fill that roster out very nicely with guys that I like.
I will say this: nobody's going to play Jamar Chase, so that might further the argument to play him. And when I say that, Meg, because I know like optimizers, people who are not hand building like most of us do, like people like Mike, Jamar Chase is not going to show up in the optimizers, right? I'm looking at his receiving yards total, and it's lower than like 12 or 13 guys that are on the main slate. It's only around that 60.5 range. And we've got guys like Diggs in that range. Let's see. He's not on the main slate. Jalen Waddle is 65.5. Drake London is higher. Ted McMillan is higher. Ibuka is higher. Amon-Ra St. Brown, who again is not on the main slate. Jackson Smith and Jigba, Pickens, Nakua. Those are all above him. So at 7,700, I can't imagine optimizers spitting out Jamar Chase, Mike.
Yeah, you're not getting Chase without a pretty big manual adjustment.
Meg, your thoughts on anybody in this game, including Josh Jacobs?
My priority is Josh Jacobs in this game. He's even been more involved in the receiving game. Not that I think they'll have to do that in this particular game script, but Josh Jacobs is the priority for me. Also, Tucker Kraft is kind of a tight end. There's a lot of tight ends that are kind of those mid-price tight ends like Ferguson, Warren, Kraft that I just like a lot. Even though I typically try to search for cheap tight ends, those three do stick out to me. So I'd say Kraft and Jacobs are the priority. I don't know what to do with the whole receiving situation. Does Matthew Golden have a post-bye rookie bump that people always talk about? Maybe, but I thought he was going to have that against the Cowboys, and he really didn't. He had, I believe, like 60 yards or something like that. So definitely Dubs and Matthew Golden are in my player pool. And Jordan Love, honestly, for 4 p.m. if you wanted to do some kind of Packers onslaught. I just don't know how I'm going to get there. So Jacobs and Kraft are the priorities to me in this game. And I like Mike's call out. I think I'd do it more like in a 4 p.m. only in that situation. And because there's a lot of guys in this slate in the 4 p.m. only to jam in too. So that's probably how I'd approach it. But I totally get Mike's call out with Joe Flacco and who he's now throwing to.
Yeah, I think Jordan Love's interesting. I just feel like this is the type of game where the way they're going to get there early and late is through the running game. I could even see Emmanuel Wilson like an anytime touchdown situation, which I'm not going to bet, but it's probably like plus 350 or plus 400, something like that. I could see that happening as well. I think the Jamar Chase is interesting. I actually had a Jake Browning over 214.5 passing yards last week. That came in. I might go to the other side of it now and take Jamar Chase's over because I think that number is a little too low in a negative game script. So I'm going to look into that prop later. I'll put it up on Sportsline. I'll be giving that out on the prop show on CBS Sports Network tomorrow at 1 o'clock. All right, let's get to our cheat sheets. Meg, get us started with your favorite stack, chalk, buy, fade, contrarian, and value.
Sure. So I'm going right back to the Dak Prescott. Well, looking like a little MVP campaign from Dak Prescott, George Pickens, and Jake Ferguson. Chalk buy is going to be Christian McCaffrey. He's a wide receiver. Unfortunately, like Mike said, I wish we could play him as a wide receiver, but I'm still going to play him even as a chalk play. Chalk fade for me is Chris Olave. I just don't see the ceiling, and I just don't like playing him at that ownership. Both my contrarian and value play is going to be Travis Hunter. I, again, think there's going to be some rookie breakout from him. Maybe it will be later in the season, but we kind of saw a hint of it on Monday night. So I want to be early to it, and he's looking to come in very low owned, and I just think his price is very low. He's still out there for about 70% of the routes of the passing plays. So I'm going to go with Travis Hunter, and maybe that could be a cheap contrarian play that hits.
With all that said, I am going to consider Trevor Lawrence at 5,100 as I don't know that it'll be super contrarian, but yeah, pretty contrarian quarterback. I just feel like they're going to run the ball a lot. So I'm going to have to look into that one a little bit more. But I think Trevor Lawrence, I kind of like that idea that we started out the show with Trevor Lawrence on one side, JSN on the other side, and you call it a day. I think that's a really interesting lineup construction. Hopefully Trevor is going to use his legs a little bit more. My cheat sheet is Drake May. I'm using Meg's guy. Drake May to Hunter Henry. Although I will tell you, I'm just as likely to play Drake May naked as I am to stack him with anybody, including Hunter Henry or like a guy like Stephon Diggs. I really like the idea of playing Drake May this week. So I'm going to play him again more naked than I am with a stack, but a stacking partner would be relatively cheap Hunter Henry at 4,300. My chalk buy is going to be Josh Jacobs. I love Jonathan Taylor. I love Christian McCaffrey. I don't know that I can get a lineup with all three of them in it. I mean, technically I can, but I'm going to rotate through those three guys quite a bit. My chalk fade is going to be JSN. Keep in mind what I said about coming into the show. I wasn't really considering JSN or Trevor Lawrence, but after talking with you two, I'm like, okay, I can understand playing JSN on one side and Trevor on the other, but mostly I'm going to be out on JSN because my pay up options are going to be in other places. My contrarian play, I don't know if it's going to be Jacoby Brissett, which I kind of hope it is, or Kyler Murray, but I think Marvin Harrison's interesting at 5,300. There's other contrarian plays you can go with. I'm not really leaning into this particular contrarian play, but I could see him having a potential big day in a trailing game script. Good conditions at Indianapolis. Value play, I'm going to go. We didn't talk about him a lot, and we do have to see how the injury situation shapes up with Dallas. But Ryan Flournoy had a ton of targets and a ton of production, and that wasn't the first game that Dak looked his way. So I think Ryan Flournoy in a good game script, or I should say in just a game script that's going to have a lot of points on both sides of the ball at 3,600 at Carolina is an interesting value play where you're going to need to have value open up. We did talk about other value that's going to open up depending on some of those receiver injuries, especially in that San Francisco game. So keep an eye on that kind of thing. Mike, let's go to your top three at each position. We start at quarterback.
Unmute myself there. All right. I'm going to give you four probably because I am going to play Flacco a little bit, but top three, Justin Herbert, Drake May, Dak Prescott. Justin Herbert, to me, is the one that's probably not going to grab a ton of ownership here. I think that there's just not some stacking partners as clear. I think Dak, while it's still $200 more, there's more clear paths to stacking. And then Drake May is cheaper. So when I look at this spot, it's these three for me, and then Joe Flacco probably going to be the fourth at a flat 4K.
I love all three of those. Obviously, Drake and Dak are on our cheat sheets, Meg. Let's go to top three running backs.
Rico Dowdle, I listed him above Christian McCaffrey, and it's just the salary savings. I think that he presents, a ton of upside as we saw last week, still under 6K. Love the revenge narrative. Love just the matchup against Dallas, who hasn't really been able to stop many people this season. Christian McCaffrey, that number should probably say 9,400, and I would probably still click on it. Just the volume is incredible. Rachaad White, I think Bucky Irving's not going to play in this game. You gave that practice report today, not anywhere in sight. I think it's pretty clear he's sitting. Rachaad White going to touch the ball 15 to 20 times, in my opinion, in this game. A big weapon in this one. So Rico Dowdle, Christian McCaffrey, Rachaad White.
It's safe to say these three you can use in cash. And when we talk about your top three wide receivers, the first one we've already clarified is a potential cash game option. Talk to me about your top three wide receivers.
Yeah, Puka Nacua, George Pickens, and Jackson Smith-Njigba. And I know that these guys, you're not going to be able to go grab them all three together. I would love to give you the value wide receivers I'm going to play, but I simply do not know yet until we get, what the situation with Tampa Bay game and San Francisco is going to look like. Yeah. When we have that information, there will be cheap pass catching options in that game. But as of right now, it's Puka, obvious reasons. George Pickens has been a touchdown machine, and I think it continues here. I think he's the contrarian play. I think he's 5, 6, 7% owned, certainly not double digits. And then JSN at Jacksonville. I think JSN is going to continue to just do what he's been doing. I think he's priced about right at this point, but one I'm comfortable leaning into.
I like the upside of both Pickens and Ted McMillan in that Carolina-Dallas game. And again, to your point, they're not like 2% owned, but they're certainly not highly owned either. So that's something to consider. All right, let's go to your top three tight ends.
Jake Ferguson is a clear number one for me. Just basically getting double-digit targets in this Dallas Cowboys offense until CeeDee Lamb returns. Competitive game. Tyler Warren, Trey McBride in the same game. I like all three of these guys. And when I list the top three tight ends here, these are the top three tight ends that you could essentially go grab, throw in your lineup, and know that you're going to score fantasy points there. I am totally fine punting with Long at 2,500. Tommy Tremble in that Cowboys game. Like any good game environment, anyone under 3K, I am very much okay with punting at the tight end spot. And this seems like an okay week to do that outside of Ferguson. And I should also say I may play two tight ends. I may play Ferguson and a guy like Long or Tremble together.
That makes a ton of sense. Two tight end build. Mike, we see a lot more of the two tight end builds coming from you when the pricing is actually pretty efficient, right? In other words, when you have like all the value plays, there's not the need to go to the two tight end lineup, but sometimes we need to do that because of the other more expensive players we want to fit into our lineup.
Absolutely, yes. As pricing gets tighter, I think the inefficiency is in the bottom end tight ends that still have the upside to catch a 6-yard touchdown pass, right? So,
right. So find your low end, your low cost stuff, maybe with your defenses and your tight ends, maybe a one of the receivers because of an injury issue in the Tampa San Francisco game or some of the other games we talked about, and then gives you the ability to kind of stack up who you want to play. All right, before we get out of here, Eagles are visiting the Giants today. Meg, I put out a play on Sportsline and on the early edge this morning. It was the first half under 20.5, kind of a boring play. Mike, I know you like the first half team total for the Philadelphia Eagles over 12.5. Meg, what's your take on this game? We're Washington fans, so we just want to see these teams beat up on each other and maybe both end with a loss somehow. What's your take on this game? It's 7-point spread, 40.5 point total.
Washington fan, but obsessed with Cam Scatterbo based on my best ball ownership. So I just want to see that bowling ball get into the end zone. So my official play on Sportsline was Cam Scatterbo to find the end zone. When you get plus 150, plus 160 some places for I think RB1 and the goal line roll back. I know, very tough matchup. I want to take advantage of that. So I'm hoping and playing that Cam Scatterbo finds the end zone. That's all I'm rooting for tonight.
I love it. Cam Scatterbo was so fun to watch. We talked about it on the early edge this morning. He reminds me, he's like a combo between Marion Barber and MJD. Like the bowling ball aspect plus the I'm just going to attack everybody that comes in my way aspect of Barber, MB3, who I love playing both of those guys on my fantasy teams back in the day. Mike, go ahead.
Does he kind of remind you of John Riggins like 40 years later, just a little crazy? Like there's a little crazy to him?
Yeah, a little bit. That's a pretty good comp from an era, so long ago. The modern day John Riggins would absolutely look like Cam Scatterbo. That's a good comp. Yes, Mike, if people are playing, I don't know if you want to give out more opinions on this game before we get out of here, but more than what you gave out early this morning on the over 12.5 first half on the Eagles. But from a showdown standpoint, are there a couple of players, whether it's in the captain spot or the flex spot, that you'd be like, this is a guy I'll probably slide into my lineup?
I'll speculate on AJ Brown. The squeaky wheel is, it's probably in the Eagles' best interest to either not have him on the roster or get him happy at this point. So I think that considering the financial commitment and everything there, the option is to get him happy. And this, to me, projects as a pretty perfect spot to do that.
That was such a perfect line. Like, I'm afraid I'm going to screw it up, but either not have him on the roster or make him happy is such a perfect line as it pertains to AJ Brown. Yeah. And Giants play a lot of aggressive coverage. They're probably going to try to stop Barkley, a lot of man coverage. AJ Brown's the type of guy that can, just with his body positioning and the way he kind of uses his arms kind of subtly to push defenders off, like he could absolutely take a 10-yard pass or a 50-yard pass, another 50 yards. So I think AJ Brown maybe in the captain position would be interesting. Mike, would you consider that, AJ Brown in the captain position?
Yes, definitely. Okay. Definitely we'll have an AJ Brown captain.
All right. Absolutely love it. Got a little bit insight on this Thursday night game. Commanders on Monday. Can't wait to watch that. It's the Hail Mary revenge game. No revenge will be had, though. Commanders are going to cruise to another victory. Meg, thank you so much. Mike, thank you so much. It's a 10-game slate. Do not forget to join our FFT DFS contest and rate and review this podcast if you haven't already. We really appreciate that as well. We'll see you next time on Fantasy Football Today, DFS.